So when he starts pulling away, even more than I need distance between our heads, I can't just extract that leg and throw it over. But what I could do is I could just put this leg on this side. It doesn't require any flexibility because of the distance between us. In this case, first thing I'm going to do here is build to an elbow in order to have a farther reach with my arm and wrap around his butt, around his hips rather, so that he doesn't, at least to delay him a little bit in the roll. You notice that we create a little fulcrum here. We can go for that short arm bar, okay? It doesn't matter which way he turns his thumb to defend it. We can always find a good angle, okay? Right now, this is the angle. Hey, what's going on? We're here at Uprise MMA again, and we're gonna do a video on Omoplata setup from the clamp from Close Guard. So, in my previous video, I'm gonna link it up here. We did a triangle setup with a finish from the same position, and it is a pretty high percentage because the setup itself. But there, like any other submission attempt or a submission altogether, there is a defense to it. There's an early defense, there's a prevention, etc., etc. So in our case now, we're going to show what happens when the opponent starts defending, starts preventing you from getting onto the triangle. We can turn it into an omoplata based on their body positioning for the most part. And then we'll see some follow-ups from there in case they defend the omoplata. If any submission we have, we need to have a good setup and a good follow-up. Otherwise, the submission is only as good as pretty much your opponent. Again, good setup and a good follow-up are crucial to any submission. So first, we're going to demonstrate the triangle from the previous video without any explanation or anything, but just to demonstrate the actual technique. And then we're going to see what happens when they defend it, how to get to the omoplata, and then we're going to hit on some details on the omoplata, and then we'll show follow-ups for the omoplata when they defend the omoplata. Okay, so first of all, what we did last week, let's face this way so it can be more clear for the camera. What we did last week was we're in close guard, our partner is framing on us, ready to stand up. We need to break those frames. We bring his hands to the floor. Anytime we bring our hands to the floor in a close guard, the hands are separated from his torso. We have an option to go for isolating one arm. In this case, it's going to be an over-wrap isolation. That's going to lead us to the clamp. When we do the clamp, we're going to clamp him basically with my knee on his shoulder, my top knee clamping down on the shoulder, and my left foot, lift up please. My left foot is on his hip here. That's going to prevent him from posturing up and coming into me. Now, from last week, we did a triangle setup where I put my foot on his far shoulder. I extracted this foot. Makes it very easy when I create a little distance between our heads. And then from here, I go into a trap triangle, and then we finish the triangle, right? We're not going to go into any details now about it, but if he starts, he's posting on his hand right now and he's making it easy for me, but most of the time people will grab onto the knee over here and not let me extract that leg. It's pretty obvious that I'm going for a triangle here. So instead, what they do is they start pulling away and kind of like not wanting me to go for that triangle. That is a perfect setup for an omoplata, okay? So let's put back a little bit if you don't mind, bro. So when he starts pulling away, even more than I need distance between our heads, I can't just extract that leg and throw it over. But what I could do is I could just put this leg on this side. It doesn't require any flexibility because of the distance between us, right? So all I do is throw it on this side. Don't move your head. Let's make it more realistic, obviously. All I do is put my foot here and I start pushing away. As I push away, I extract the other foot. I'm touching my knee to my own ankle. Now, I need to build to an elbow in order to be able to prevent him from rolling over. 9 out of 10 times people will start rolling, okay? And they will start doing it early because they know what's coming. If I'm here and I start extracting my leg, most of the time, because I'm pressing down on his shoulder, lifting his butt up, and that gives him the roll, okay? So in this case, first thing I'm gonna do here is build to an elbow in order to have a farther reach with my arm
and wrap around his butt, around his hips rather, so that he doesn't, at least to delay him a little bit in the roll. Right now I'm still weak, but at least to prevent him from rolling, but at least I'm in the beginning stages of, you know, framing and preventing. Now, from here, I'm going to extract my feet and stretch them forward. What that does is, that they don't have to be crossed, but they need to be kind of tight. Notice that when they're tight, if he tries to extract this arm, it's very hard, okay? If I'm, there are different variations of omoplata from here, where people triangle their feet. I find that when I triangle, there is a bigger gap over here. There's nothing wrong with it. People have done it for ages. But for me, at least for me, it doesn't work, okay? Again, it's not the wrong move. There's a bigger gap over here. If he has more flexibility in his arm and all that, if he knows how to wiggle it out, he probably will. That's why I'm gonna need to hold the arm or hold the elbow here if I'm triangling. But if I stretch my legs like this, not only it puts extra pressure on his shoulder, but it also keeps my thighs tightly connected around his arm, which makes it very hard for him to pull his arm freely, which makes it possible for me to post on his hand rather than occupy it with his arm. So I'm going to post here. Now I'm going to start scooting that way, away from his hips, which is going to put his hips down to the floor. Now, obviously this was exaggerated. He's not doing anything to prevent me from doing it, but this is the basic principle of it. First of all, we need to drill it without any resistance, and then we're going to add resistance obviously in our drillings. From here, I'm going to point both my feet away from him and both my knees towards his head, right here. Now, I'm going to start coming up and perpendicular to his body. I'm going to be looking perpendicular to his body. Right here is when the shoulder lock is going to kick in. There's variations when I can, most of the time there is no need for it, but I can go with different grips over here and do the exact same thing. If you want to be a little nicer to the person, you can cross-face him, nicer quote-unquote. You can cross-face him right here and do the exact same thing, right? You can cross-face him from here. I wouldn't do that. It's not nice. It's not making friends. Even the fact that I'm sitting here and talking in this position is really not making Brian any more of a friend. but he's a warrior. So once again, real quick, we go from the posture break to putting the hands on the floor, switching into the overwrap, the clamp here. Now what I'm gonna do is create some distance between our heads. That's gonna bring my knee further down. If our heads are close, my knee's popping up in the air. There is no pressure on his shoulder here. If I create a little distance, that does two things. It aids with the pressure on top of his knee, on top of his shoulder, to prevent him from coming up. And it makes it easier for me to throw my leg over his shoulder. When I do that, that's when I start setting up the triangle. However, in this case, he's being stubborn and he pulls away. And people do that because they don't want to be triangled. I just throw my leg over here. I push on his head with my foot in order to extract my knee. Now I build to an elbow, my arm is across his body, and I stretch my legs. Stretch my legs with my thighs pinched. Now I start scooting away from him. Point both my knees towards his head, my feet away, and I start looking across towards his shoulder and sitting up. You can see the action with my butt right now. Okay, I'm not going forward, I'm not going backwards, I'm going exactly across his shoulder. What that does is, without my feet, keep your arm there please, keep your arm there. What that does is, it brings the arm this way, right? And it doesn't take a lot because I'm using the strength of my hips, my body, my legs. So it's very easy to attain, and it's very, very strong submission. You gotta be really careful when you're doing that, okay? So the fine details here are, in the case of this variation of omoplata at least, you want to have your your thighs pinched around his arm so that he doesn't pull it out without me holding on to the arm. I can use this hand to post and start scooting away from his body. I'm not scooting backwards, that's gonna let the arm free. I'm scooting away You're gonna scoot as many times as it takes to put his hip on the floor. His shoulder is already on the floor. I want his hips on the floor. Okay, once the hips are on the floor, I'm going to windshield wipe my feet to point away from him. My knees are going towards his head. And then from here, I'm gonna look towards the opposite shoulder and start sitting up. Lifting my butt off the floor is basically enough. Some people are a little more flexible and they will take a little more, they have a little more range of motion in that Kimura action, and it'll take a little bit longer for you to finish. That means you have to sit your butt up a little bit higher. There's no rush. You just finish it as long as it takes. You can literally stand up from there or get to your knees or whatever. If you have to, you finish it. Now, when we do that omoplata, naturally, we did that as a follow-up to the triangle. You can initiate the omoplata without even trying the triangle, without even attempting the triangle. It's just easier if you attempt the triangle first, because the triangle trap, which is, sorry about that, which is right here, gives us options for a triangle finish. It also gives us options for, if you want to go for Kimuras from here, it gives us options for arm bars right here. So triangle trap has a lot of variety of submissions. So I would attempt the triangle first, and the omoplata is a follow-up to the triangle. Okay. Now, what happens when, oftentimes, let's move back a little bit because we're gonna roll over. What happens oftentimes is two different reactions people give you to the omoplata, and that's nine times out of 10. It's not the correct defense to the omoplata, but 9 times out of 10 people will roll. Okay, so when I start going for that omoplata right here, be it maybe because I didn't build up to an elbow and stop him fast enough, or because he just knows what's happening, he has fast reflexes, boom, he goes to roll. Right? The first thing I'm gonna do is come up with him in order to sit on his shoulder. Then I'm gonna fold my leg, my shin, under his arm. Okay, I'm gonna have my other hand here on the floor. Now when he tries to get up, try to get up please. It's very hard, he's pinned down, he's literally pinned down. If I'm sitting on his shoulder, it doesn't matter which shoulder, there's no way he's coming up. Put your leg down for a sec please. From here, because his arm is on top of my shin, you notice that we create a little fulcrum here. We can go for that short arm bar, okay? It doesn't matter which way he turns his thumb to defend it, we can always find a good angle, okay? Right now, this is the angle, okay? If he turns his thumb towards the cameras, we can still find the angle. It's gonna take a little bit longer, right? If that is not working for some reason, you can always involve your other foot. Step at the end of the lever and then press down, okay? It's not very hard armbar to come by, but if it does, it does. If you can't finish it, at least you're on top. Another thing that may happen from here is he can sneak his left arm under my armpit and he can pull his elbow down because maybe I'm trying to do this. Go ahead and do it. Now, put your feet down, please. Legs down, so the camera can see. From here, what we have is access to the other arm, okay? We're gonna start working on Kimura traps from here, okay? So one way or another, we're in good position. I mean, we land on top with a top pin, arms isolated. We should be in a very good position to follow up the omoplata from there, okay? And lastly, I'm not gonna go into details on these submissions, obviously. This is an omoplata video, but it shows setups and follow-ups to the submission. Lastly, we go for the omoplata, and I'm here. I start going for it, he realizes that and he starts posturing back up again. As he postures back up again, we catch the triangle trap, okay? So that is another thing that may happen, and it happens more often than not when people are a little more experienced. Instead of rolling, they'll try to posture up. Of course, they'll prevent you from getting the triangle also, since they're more experienced, but it's not a reason not to attempt it. Sometimes they just won't have their arms there to stop the triangle. No, that's good, keep it there. So, as I go for the omoplata here, he postures up, and we're back into the triangle trap territory. From here, we finish as we do with the triangle. Maybe we keep it here, maybe he's stubborn, maybe he puts his arm away. We can go into a reverse triangle here and finish, or opposite side triangle, I'm not sure what the terminology is, and then finish arm lock. So whatever we do, we have, the main idea is that we have, thank you, we have a good setup for an omoplata, and we have a good follow-up or a couple of good follow-ups for omoplata in case it doesn't work. Worst come to worst, we'll get a sweep out of it and land on top. We started in close guard. We end up in top position with possibly submission attempts available. All right. So if you take nothing else away from this video, take this. You need, for any good submission, you need to have a good setup and a good follow-up. Otherwise, your submission is only as good as your opponent's skill to defend it. All right. Well, thank you very much, Uprise, for hosting. Thank you, Brian, for being a good partner again. Please like and subscribe.